Hello, hello, world. I'm Dr. Peter KB Saint Jean. I'm here with you for the Shy Piece Show. This is what? I guess we have 3 more shows for the year. It's the 12th day of the 12th month, 2018, December 12th of the year 2018. And I want to remind you that the Peaceful World Movement is bringing you the Shy Piece Show. Shy Piece is brought to you by the Peaceful World Movement at 11451 South Michigan Avenue, P.O. Box 206-308, Chicago, Illinois, 60628, 716-603-0992. You can reach us at www.shypeace.net. I have the pleasure, second time in almost a year, to have Provost Dr. Michael Emerson joining us.
Nice to see you.
And Sarah. We see her face,
Yeah.
right? Finally, Sarah is the one that usually is in the back. And we have to find a way to say a special thanks to Omari here at Can TV, this super duper place, who's helping us out to be able to operate our phones. So we have the pleasure also to have a show for 1 hour. We have 2 segments. We'll have a first segment. Sarah will be here with us for this segment, and then Sarah will be in the back. So if you want to make sure you ask Sarah a question, make sure that you call in the first half. Let me also remind you that you can reach us at 312-738-1060 because this is a live call-in show. So we expect you to call us in. We'll be looking forward to your calls. So get ready for a great show. Dr. Emerson, welcome again.
Hey, once a year, that's you can handle me for that much.
Yes, it's a pleasure having you here. So the first segment of our show, we are going to be talking about what is a sociologist. There is something, similar among us. So Dr. Emerson will introduce himself briefly, and he has some relevance to sociology. He'll tell us, what that is, and then Sarah will introduce herself and tell us what is the relevance to sociology. And remember that at the Shy Piece Show, our question is, how do you contribute to a more peaceful Chicago? And maybe by extension, a more peaceful world. So Dr. Emerson, what is your relevance to sociology?
That's what I am. Yeah, I'm a sociologist by training. I've been a professor of sociology for almost 30 years now, and in addition to doing administrative work these days, that's what I do. I write, I continue to publish on sociology, so you and I have a lot in common.
And I know, folks, you say this now, you will see it in archive. If you're part of the purpose of recording this show and telling the public right now, is that so you can understand how sociologists could contribute to a more peaceful world, how it contribute to a more peaceful Chicago, a peaceful world by extension. Now, how about you, Sarah? What is your relevance to sociology?
Well, I am double majoring in both sociology and criminal justice, so I'm still in the process of learning what my role in sociology is and what all it involves.
So the way that we rehearsed this is that even if I am sitting in the main interviewer's seat, and Sarah, who is also a trained producer, is sitting in a guest seat, and Dr. Emerson is in the middle, Sarah is actually going to start off the interview. And ask Dr. Emerson, right, because she is a young teenager still, right, who is the type of people that when we as sociologists speak, we want that young persons like you are able to understand what sociology is. So I would like Sarah, I would like you, and also Sarah works with me through the Urban Peace Lab. She's training to do this type of thing, right? So she's in training here as well. So Sarah, I want you to take over this interview a little bit and ask Dr. Emerson, so all the people young people like yourself can understand about what sociology is about and the journey of being a sociologist.
Yeah, well, as someone who's just in the very beginning stages of this journey, I just want to ask you kind of about your life experiences and how you started out as a sociologist, what led you to where you are now, what do you think some of the most significant things in your life that happened or you experienced that led you to want to be a sociologist?
Yeah.
Just kind of your journey.
Great question. So we all are affiliated with North Park University, which is on the northwest side. As an undergrad, exactly when I was your age, I was going to a different university on the north side. And we had classes on the north campus and we had classes in the downtown campus, and I'd go back and forth. And when I went downtown, I would take the train, I'd get off the train, and there would be what then was called Cabrini Green, which was known as kind of one of the poorest areas of Chicago. And then I would walk towards the campus, and just a couple blocks away would be what's still there, called the Gold Coast. And the discrepancy between the poverty and just a few blocks away, the wealth. And then noticing different sorts of folks seem to occupy these two areas. And when I was your age, I wasn't majoring in sociology. I thought, I need to understand this. Why does this happen? How can it be so different, so close to each other? So I remember asking my professor at the time, it was like a psychology course, and they said, oh, you want to do sociology. So sociology became, and my areas of interest have always been urban and cities and race, and later on we've added looking at religion and values and such, but yeah, that's how the trajectory started.
Well, sir, now since we're talking about the beginning of journeys, and maybe I can pitch in too, because I'm just as guilty as being or innocent as being a sociologist. How did your journey of having interest in sociology begin?
Actually, that's kind of funny that you asked. It actually started in your intro to sociology class.
Really?
Yeah, I took it as a gen ed and ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would, and learned a lot from that class. So I really decided I wanted to go into that.
So did you have an idea of what you wanted to major in before?
No, I had no idea. I took it as a freshman, and I came in and decided, and actually just declared my major at the beginning of this year. Both
Nice.
majors.
So what was the experience that stood out to make you say, hey, I want to do this?
There was a lot. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I always saw sociology as just like this small little field that looks into like people as in general. Then I realized it really encompasses so much more, and it's every aspect of life, which I think is just really important to learn about.
Yeah. How about for you?
Well, oh yeah, for me, you know what? When I was a little boy, my father was a marshal, a bailiff, and he would go to evict people from their homes. He would issue summonses, and he would sometimes go repossess cars.
Wow.
I used to enjoy going with him because we lived like 5 miles from the city. And he would go out to the countryside. Sometimes we would leave very early morning so you could get people like 5 a.m. or so while they just get that. It's probably not the most glamorous job,
No.
but I would go with him. And then the people in the countryside were so nice. They would give us fruits and vegetables, and I would have fun with them, you know. But I just enjoyed seeing the different places. So after a while, I enjoyed going, and then I kept going back to the same places now. And then I told my father, he'd come and ask me, and I'd tell my father I don't want to go with him anymore. And I said, why? Because you told me you're going to Wesley, so you must be going by Mr. Jones. He's like, how did you know that? I said, well, you always go by Mr. Jones when you go to Wesley, you know. And then after a while, I just realized that there are patterns when I grew a little bit older. I became curious, like, why is this man always going back to the same people? Like, why are these same people among everybody else still having the similar kinds of problems?
Yeah.
And as I continued to grow, I realized that there's certain patterns in life that, you know, good things and bad things and in between seem to happen almost anywhere, but there seemed to be some kind of logic. So I became kind of curious to understand, you know, what gets people to move, how people tick, and, you know, how can you explain these types of things that seem so interesting? And a lot of questions, there's just things I saw, and I wondered how you understood that. And actually, I was not at my associate's degree level, I was not a sociologist. I was a criminal justice major.
Okay.
My bachelor's degrees are in criminal justice and English.
Wow.
My master's is in criminology.
So it took a while to get to sociology.
So, and I took a sociology class as an undergrad, but I decided at the criminology level I was interested in crime and violence. But when I got to I did not want to become a criminologist I am a criminologist, but I didn't want a PhD in criminology. I wanted to understand a little bit broader. So I thought if I have my master's in criminology and I have my PhD in sociology, I have kind of both worlds. So that's kind of a snapshot at type of how I got there.
Very good. Yeah.
And Sarah, you have continued to remain interested, huh?
I have, yeah. I have.
Yeah, well, that's good. We hope to help you to continue in that path. So what more you want to learn from Dr. Emerson about sociology and his journey?
I'm really interested in hearing more about your research that you've done. I had a quick look at your book earlier. It's just really interesting. I don't know, I have a lot of questions about your methods and just kind of what brought you to that research specifically.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk about this book here.
Yeah, well, we'll
Talk
dive deeper into it, but I guess probably the question that, because we don't want to give away too much of the second half, but just the idea where when you decide what and how to research. I think she's probably asking
Yeah.
how we do decide what to research and how to research it, kind of generically, and then later on
Yeah.
you'll answer specifically for the book.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think probably we don't really know how we end up studying what we study, but you become interested in something, you start reading in the area, you interact with people that are working in the area, you start identifying things we don't know, and then you craft a way to try to answer those questions. So like I said, my general interest has always been trying to understand how to make cities work for people, make them better places for everyone, how to make it more equitable and just race relations wise. And I'm, for many years now, interested in how does religion help or hinder relations between people. So my questions always seem to revolve around those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks, let me remind you that you are watching the Shy Peace Show, brought to you by the Peaceful World Movement. You can find us at 11451 South Michigan Avenue, P.O. Box 206308, Chicago, Illinois 60628. Reach us at 716-603-0992, or you can see us on the web, www.shypeace.net. Now, when you visit shypeace.net, I'll probably show you guys our website in a little bit, you will see a section that has the shows. And this is the work done here by Sarah.
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
Sarah has all these different skills, right? So we'll show a bit of the Shy Peace Show. And you can also visit North Park University, right? You go to the website of the university and you visit the various components of the academic majors that are there. North Park University, by the way, is a nonprofit organization, 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we have various majors. You can see the Johnson Center, beautiful site overlooking downtown Chicago, and you can go online and we have graduate programs, undergraduate programs, theology, and various types of majors. So you can just visit at northpark.edu. So, Dr. Emerson, why North Park? And why North Park for you?
Why did I come to North Park?
Yes, because later on we want someone to know why North Park as a student. So why North Park for the provost?
Yeah, so I used to be at a university called Rice University down in Texas.
Yes.
And I was there for quite some time, but I was looking for a university that basically combined the interest that I have, that's really trying to use its sense as a university to make a better city, to make a better world. So that seems to be North Park's value, its mission, and I thought I need to be part of that. You know, I got people like Peter St. John there, I got to be there.
Yeah, wow. And once you came on, we started talking about, there were different terms that went about, and luckily we have linguists and people with legal backgrounds that, figure out that certain words already exist. And I ended up serving the committee with you, Catalyst 606 committee. Sarah, have you gone on a Catalyst trip?
The on-campus ones? Or
The off-campus
Off-campus.
ones?
A few, yeah.
Yeah. So what is your most memorable one?
Oh man, I don't know. I haven't been on that many.
Is that the one to Roseland?
Of course.
So tell me about this. As someone, when you went to the south side of Chicago on this trip, was that the first time that you had gone to the south side of Chicago?
It is, yeah. Not being from Chicago, I hadn't really explored that many parts of the city, and I had never really gone to the south side because I never really had a reason to.
So C. Wright Mills talks about, and I guess maybe Prof. Dr. Emerson, maybe the sociological imagination. You can tell us too, but how did your sociological imagination work? You said it already by driving through through the areas. But C. Wright Mills tells us that we have to be able to not just look at things just for what we think it is, just in what's in front of us. That we ought to look at the history, and we look at the context, and we ought to think of ourselves and those things outside of what they are, but also realize that we ourselves are part of that thing that we see, right? There are different reads for C. Wright Mills, but that's kind of one part of it. So when you went down to the south side of Chicago, and I don't think you were yet declared a sociology major, and you have ideas about what the south side of Chicago looked like, you get in there and there's a reality of what you're seeing, and then you come out of there, get back to campus safely and reflect on it. Tell us a little bit about that journey, about what you thought of before you went, what happened when you got there, and then how did it impact you afterwards?
Yeah, so my expectations before we went, I didn't have that many expectations because really everything I know about the South Side is either from books or media or people who live there who talk about it. I didn't know it through any kind of personal experience. So going there and seeing what it looks like for myself was interesting. It was not quite what I was expecting. There was a lot more people walking around, and it seemed much more busier and happier than I was expecting.
Just based on what you saw from
Yeah.
So how did that impact you as a young student? That came from St. Louis, yeah, it's not Chicago, it's a big city, but not as much.
Yeah.
How did that, when you came out and you had that experience you had and you were thinking what you were thinking, what type of impact that has on you? Or had on you?
Yeah, it really just made me realize that Chicago is one big city, but there's so many different parts to it, and every part of the city is so different. Because what I'm used to is a smaller city, as you said, and so it's kind of much more similar from this area to that area. And in Chicago, it's a lot different. Yeah, so I really got to see some of the differences between even the area that North Park is in compared to Roseland and Inglewood, where we were.
Yes. So, Dr. Emerson, as you listen to Sarah say this, and you are saying that's what brought you to North Park, and you are the man in charge over faculty members to help with vision and guidance and to help make sure that you can hear students give that type of feedback. Does that fit into what you expected into the mold of the experience at North Park?
Yeah, so you know because you've been part of it from the very get-go, but we do something at North Park that no other university does as far as we can tell, and that is we have this thing we call a Catalyst 606 program. Catalyst means we're looking for change both in our students and our professors, but then also in our community. And then we're, say, 606 because we're talking about the same common 3 digits of the zip code of Chicago. So everybody in Chicago shares that 606. So we do something that's very different. That is that on Wednesday afternoons, we don't have class on campus. We have hundreds of students going out with their professors throughout the city, and they're studying all kinds of things. So if they're in sociology or criminal justice, they're looking at those issues. If they're in a business course, they're probably going downtown. They're going to meet one of our alums working in a tower, seeing what they do in accounting or how they work for a particular company. So we're looking to link in the strongest way possible experience in the classroom and experience and networking outside. So that people that graduate from North Park are going to know the city, they're going to know how to navigate the city, they're going to have connections throughout the city, and they're going to be able to think about, this is the place I want to be and make a difference.
And we hear that difference, Sarah, and as the chair of the sociology department and the chair of criminal justice majors on campus, it's amazing. And as a person, from the Caribbean, a military person, and so on, it's amazing to bring students out of the classroom. And I take on a disposition. Well, maybe I'm just a little bit playful, just kind of how I am. Maybe a little bit goofy. I have a bunch of corny jokes, right? But I think that it is great to bring students to the south side of Chicago and the west side in some sections, and just say, just be yourself. Like sometimes, how should I act? How should I dress? How should I be? No, just go as you are. The same way that you go to another neighborhood, just go as you are. And it is important because for me as a sociologist, I want to teach sociology in ways that does not seem like I'm teaching sociology.
Okay.
That student, when I'm in the classroom, I'll teach it, but when students interact and they learn and we ask questions, when we talk about the scientific study of interactions and relations among humans, it's very important, that people sometimes afterwards, they go like, oh, wow. And then we talk about, tell me some theoretical connections to some of those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I want to ask a bit about, you said about, and Sarah asked you the question, Dr. Emerson, about why you did sociology. And you said you had this general interest in there. But do you think that when you decided you wanted to do sociology, was there ever a time in your life, you think earlier, that you kind of wanted to do something like that, but you didn't quite know what it was?
Probably. So, like yourself, I'm not from Chicago. I was born here, but then we quickly moved away, and I grew up in a tiny little town in central Minnesota, where it's cold, but it's very strange and bizarre, I think, because from the outside it would look like everybody is the same, looks like me, but there is this massive division between whether you were Swedish or Norwegian, they were kind of together, or if you were Finnish. You would think that's no big difference, but Finnish folks went to separate churches from the ones that were Swedish or Norwegian. We didn't use we had 2 restaurants in town. We didn't share them. We used them at different times, different rules. We couldn't be in sports teams together. You could play together till you were 5, and then that was it. So there was kind of, that's probably what caught my eye when I came to Chicago and saw at a much larger scale this sense of division. I was sensitized to it and always wondering, why is it work this way? Of course, when you're growing up in it, you do it because that's what you're told to do. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I'm listening to you, I'm thinking segregation, and I'm thinking of times when, I came in and we had desegregation, and when I joined the military, strangely, people would be trying to tell me where to be because I was from the Caribbean, not, being a majority in my country and not being used to, black folks have to know their places. So I wasn't kind of used to that. So I would end up being in places that I wasn't supposed to be. And people were, when is he going to learn that, he's supposed to stay over there? And, but even hearing, I never actually even heard it that way, except for books that we've read about how segregation lives on. But those kinds of experiences really spark, the sociological imagination.
They do.
Folks, remember, we're watching the Shy Peace Show, brought to you by the Peaceful World Movement at P.O. Box 20638, Chicago, Illinois, 11451 South Michigan Avenue, 716-603-0992. I am your host, Dr. Peter K.B. St. Jean. I want to remind you that you can call in at 312-738-1060 to have a conversation with our guest here, Provost Dr. Michael Emerson, sociologist from North Park University, Chicago. And we also have Sarah McKay, who is our super duper student. Sarah is extremely bright. She's extremely dedicated. She hasn't been late yet for one event so far. She's working in the Urban Peace Lab as a student worker. She's building our website. She's helping us with doing research work, and we're having a subject discussion today is about sociology. How does sociology contribute to a more peaceful world? Again, the purpose of our show here is to talk about how we contribute to a more peaceful Chicago, and we have Provost Dr. Michael Emerson here with us. So when we talk about sociology, and of course North Park University has many majors beyond sociology, someone may be looking at this right now, and again, this is a nonprofit organization, and we're not trying to sell anybody anything, but we are saying that if we have knowledge about self, knowledge about the world, that when we talk about issues of quality of life and peacefulness, we are probably better equipped to be able to manage ourselves and manage others. But people can do that in many different places. What is the North Park advantage?
The North Park advantage is that we are completely sold out to this mission. We just talked about that we do something no one else does because that's how much we care about it. And I only am scratching the surface. As you know, Catalyst has many more components that we could sit here all day and talk about them. But we are focused on trying to take students and make them change agents in the world. In fact, what is our saying? To live lives of
significance and service.
Yes, I love it.
Right.
So from the day one, they're going to start hearing that you're here not only to find yourself a job, not only to advance yourself, but to make the world a better place. And professors like this person right here are going to teach you how to do it because they themselves are doing it.
Yes. And Sarah, why North Park for you? Why haven't some people go to the first year of college and they go away. They go happily back to St. Louis and go to somewhere else. So why did you stay at North Park?
Yeah, I decided to stay actually because North Park is really different than a lot of other schools. I really found a strong sense of community there, and I met a lot of people that I really respect and people I can really learn from and that will help me grow, and that hopefully I can help them grow as well. And I just really found my place at North Park. So.
And it's interesting because I heard you didn't say that to me directly. I didn't even know that when Provost Emerson asked her before the break, before we came in, why North Park or how did she get there? One of the things she said is that she was not a Covenant kid, right? So what that means is the Evangelical Covenant Church owns the university, owns the Swedish Covenant Hospital, for those of you who do not know. And of course, the seminary was there even before the university, right?
Yeah.
And of course, if you are part of a church or you're part of that community, one could assume that you would have a great experience, maybe so tied, closely tied to the church. Of course, the students who are tied to the church have a great experience as well. But it's also important to hear people from other areas, speak about the journey that they have at North Park University. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine it's about to become the first half of our show already? I know that Sarah probably has a last question for Dr. Emerson that she's wondering about the future. She's probably wondering about how do you pick a career in sociology? I know she has some sort of question, but while Sarah is warming up to ask a question, I want to remind you to call her 312-738-1060 here at the Shy Peace Show as we're talking to Provost Dr. Michael Emerson from North Park University and Sarah. So Sarah, what is the question? I know you have some more questions for Dr. Emerson.
Of course. I would just ask if you could talk to yourself when you're my age or to anybody who's my age who's starting out the journey, what kind of advice would you give or any encouragement or discouragement or anything?
That's a good question. Get as many experiences as you can. Don't turn them down. Not out of fear, not out of, I don't really have time, not out of, get to know professors. Do exactly what you're doing already, right? I mean, look at all the things you're doing. That's exactly what I would have told myself. I was far too shy and limited my possibilities because of that.
That's really good advice. Thank you.
So did you have when you were her age, what were you thinking you were going to be when you were your age?
I had no idea, but my mother said I should be a counseling psychologist because they can get jobs. So that's all. I didn't know what that was.
So did you go to school for that?
Yeah, so that's how I started out.
That's right. You did say that. Wow. And what did you think about that? How did you break the news to your mom?
Yeah, she's okay, although she never, even as a professor, she would say, "What do you do all day?" No understanding of it. But
at this point now.
Yeah, not at this point. She's figured it out. But as soon as I started publishing books, then she was okay with it.
Oh, she said,
"You're doing something." Yeah. But yeah, I didn't really. It didn't motivate me. It wasn't my passion. So when I found sociology, I can remember I got married very young. So I was already married when I was in college. I remember going home and telling my wife, I found my purpose. And it's been that way ever since.
Yes, and this is in the fall, I'll be teaching hopefully a first course on peaceology.
Good.
And one of those main things is to help him find our purpose. There are a lot of men and women who end up incarcerated or who end up homeless or who end up with their back against the wall one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then they have to hit rock bottom to find their purpose. And it could be, and that's okay because then they find it and they can move on. But it is such a wonderful thing when we can even socialize our students to be able to find their purpose without too many costs.
Yeah.
And while they kind of still in, and sometimes it's okay to not know yet. I tell parents who are trying to force feed their students to their children to study a subject to say, well, your child is probably ahead of some people. And they wonder, what am I talking about? I say, well, these are the people who have made the wrong decision because some people went for nursing school and they went under pressure to do this and then they graduate and they're in tears after graduation and the parents say they're crying because they're so happy, but they're crying because they're petrified. They don't like blood, they don't like to be around needles, they don't like the smell of the hospital, but they just did that to please mom and dad. So, so Sarah, I'm glad that you found this early. I hope you can stick with it for a little bit. And we're getting ready for the second segment of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that you're watching the show, The Peaceful World Movement, and at the Shy Peace Show, it's brought to you by the Peaceful World Movement. The Shy Peace Show is brought to you by the Peaceful World Movement, folks, at 11451 South Michigan Avenue, P.O. Box 206-308, Chicago, Illinois 60628, 716-603-0992, and you can reach us at www.shypeace.net. And when you go over to our website, you will be able to see our archives and learn more about what we do, but you can also go back and review this show, including this show, and we're beginning now a second segment of the Shy Peace Show with Dr. Provost Michael Emerson of North Park University. And as you have watched us for the previous segment, when we had with us Sarah McKay, a student at North Park University, we were discussing what is it like to be a sociologist? What do sociologists do? How would they decide to do sociology. We spoke about this a little bit. There's a lot more to it. But in this segment, I'm going to talk to Dr. Emerson a little bit more about the product of sociology. And well, sociologists choose what they choose, but in particular, there is a book that he recently published that I will talk to you about. The books, you can find books from the libraries, you can borrow books and so on. Our purpose here is not to try to sell a book. Our purpose here is to inform people of the information that is within the book. So, Dr. Emerson, tell me a little, even before we talk about the market cities and people's cities, tell me about the setup, even the research that you did that even made you think that a book like that would be important.
So I started wondering, we talk a lot about what goes on in cities, specific things, like we study neighborhoods or we study a specific issue, like we might study poverty, for example. And I started wondering, could there be a more cohesive way to think about cities in the world? And it seemed to me cities were changing, we've moved into a different kind of economy now. We don't make things as much in the Western world. We do information, right? Everything is virtual, and we sell services rather than. I mean, we still make chairs, but way less people work in those kind of industries. So I'm wondering, are cities changing? And if they are, what does that mean? Especially, and I know you know this, right? In 2008, for the first time in human history, more people lived in cities than not, and we expect within this century about 85% of all humanity will live in cities. So if that's the reality for almost everybody, we better know how to make cities work and make them well. And I think traditionally we haven't given a lot of thought to that, because cities were places people came, they tried to make their living, make money, and then if they could, they would leave. They'd go to suburbs, they'd go back to their home small town like where I'm from. It wasn't the place that you raise your family and the next generation, but that's what's happening. That's what's changing. So how do we build cities well?
And as you start to think about this question, one of the things we do as sociologists is that we want to enter a conversation. And I'm pretty sure if any one of you watching the show, if you're standing somewhere in Chicago or wherever you are, and you're having a conversation with someone, like Michael and I are here talking, and someone just butts into the conversation, you'd be like, hey, you know what? Who invited you into this conversation, right? So as sociologists, when we write books, we enter a conversation, and we don't just butt in, right? We have to find a way, you have conversations with other people who invite you to the conversation. So the way we invite ourselves to the conversation is that we do a literature review.
Yeah.
And we say, there's been a conversation that has started about, hey, what are cities for? How do we live in cities? How do we make them better? And we call that in sociology a literature review. So when you went through the different works, because part of what we have to do we try not to replicate work, and we try to find gaps, in the literature. So as you start to go prepare for the book and you start to review the literature that you already know, but review afresh, because if you have to write, you have to know what was written recently. What are some of the trends you found that allowed you to find kind of a gap and said, no, this is the gap that we need to fill?
Yeah, and I can remember I was teaching actually a graduate course, PhD students, and we were doing that. The whole course was designed to be this massive literature review of what we knew, and these are all students that want to go on and write dissertations on cities, so it's helping us all. And I remember us thinking, my word, we're halfway through this semester and we haven't even talked about people yet. All the readings are just talking about economics and the way cities are related to other cities and they're competing with each other, and it just struck us as so odd. So we started thinking kind of in that category, like, okay, then let's see what's been written actually about people and cities. And then we also noticed that the literature was assuming that all cities, we're in this global world, global economy, so all cities are trying to be the same, and then they're just ranked. So, you got New York right here, and London, and Chicago is pretty high up there, and so they're just all competing in the same system. And because I was living overseas during that, it was kind of weird. I would teach while living overseas, but it didn't seem like I was encountering cities that didn't seem like they were trying to compete in the same way in the system. So that's what led to maybe what we'll talk about here in a minute, this kind of
So the people are missing. Cities without people, somewhat, or maybe with people, but not conspicuously.
Yeah.
So that is, and again, as we are discussing this, we started to say, what is sociology and how we do sociology? I'm teaching a course this semester on research methods. We teach every fall. And part of what is important to let students understand the value of methods for research, right? And the very important component of doing the literature review, and it's nice the way that you explain this, because you really go through a maze and you get tired of seeing certain things, right? And certain patterns stand out, and you say, well, where are the people? So how did you decide to do something about this gap or this pusicity or low level of research in that area?
Yeah, so it's the two things happening at once. It's where are the people in the literature review, and this assumption that all cities are basically the same, competing in the same system, with the same goal, right? To be at the top, whatever. And then at this time I was living in Copenhagen, Denmark, and seeing constantly being in my face things that didn't make sense in the context of other cities I had lived in. I always use this example, but we hadn't been there but a month, and we get a letter in the mail. So I'm there with my wife and two of our children, and one's in 9th grade and one had just graduated high school. So we get a letter from the city of Copenhagen. It's in Danish, so we got to translate it. Didn't know Danish yet. And we couldn't believe what it said. In fact, we were so sure it couldn't have said that we took it to somebody we knew spoke Danish to translate it. And sure enough, it said that. In honor and support of raising your family, we, the city of Copenhagen, will be depositing money monthly into your bank account. Like, what? One, we're not citizens. Two, I've never heard of such a thing. But the focus of that city was so much on how do we make life for our citizens better, more equitable, easier, healthier, safer. And that was part of what they did. So even when we moved and no longer lived in Copenhagen, until our youngest child turned 18, they just kept putting money into our account, even though we told them we don't live there anymore, stop. Yeah.
So what do you think that has in terms of the repercussions for society? I mean, are they meeting their goals, or what is the message? What's their goal with this?
With
the deposit, that component of the money, deposit money into families, and
that, we value children, we value raising new citizens, new residents of our community. So we collectively want to contribute to that because we know it takes more resources for each more additional child you have. So we want to help. We want to be part of that.
So when you were there at that time, were you doing the research yet, or that was before?
The research started after those kind of things happening for a few months. Like, what is going on, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is really important because for those of you who are writing, I've written a couple books. Dr. Emerson has written many, probably step counting now.
Yeah, 15.
15, right? Well, congratulations. And people always ask, how do you come up with the ideas? Well, this is the real deal. You start with ideas and things happen, right? And you put things together and you continue to build. So now you do not know yet. You have these three things, that you've spoken about so far. So now tell me more about how did the idea germinate into the idea into develop it into the book.
So I'm trying to make sense of what's going on in Copenhagen versus my experiences in Chicago or Houston, Texas, or other cities I had lived in. I had lived in LA for a while. And I remember sitting at a restaurant and a Copenhagener said, I think that we as a city have done it. We've figured out how to build a city for people. And hence, you'll see my title here, Market Cities, People Cities. And it really caught my attention, and it was a frame that helped me make sense of why what we were encountering as a family and our experiences of being in this city was so different than other cities we had lived in. Yeah.
Wow. And what do you think they meant in their local terms, in terms of what they felt? What did that mean to them?
And city for people, meaning we've been able to, in a sense, tame the market so that we don't see our primary existence to create more jobs and etc. We see our primary reason to be a city is to make lives better for people, so that we just keep trying to make better decisions and figure out how to spend our money and how to make policies that will continue to help our citizens. And they will actually say it when you go to their website and read what the city says. It's their number one goal is to create a high quality of life for its people, and the number two goal is to create equality between its people. And it thinks that is what cities are supposed to do.
So as you went through and as you prepared to do this, you have a co-author, Kevin T. Smiley, who is how you convince Kevin that this is something you guys should do together?
So Kevin was one of my graduate students. He's now a professor, but he was at that time a graduate student, and I was there for half a semester or so, and I said, you need to come over here. And we got it so he could study at the University of Copenhagen for a semester. And that started it, and then we began, he encountered the same thing, just befuddled by the differences, and so...
Where's he from?
He from Kentucky, now he lives in Buffalo, New York, so...
Oh, wow. Buffalo, my old stomping ground.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, he's at your old institution.
Yeah. Oh, wow, yeah, we have some folks, the phone number, folks, you may wonder why, when you watch this screen, you see 716-603-0992. This is actually my old number from Buffalo, New York, and I feel so connected to the folks in Buffalo, and so many people knew me through the number, and I'm still a part of the community, still own property there, still have some great friends here. Some people from Buffalo were watching our show, even if they won't call in. You guys don't want to call in, right? They do from time to time, but that's a good bit. So that's where he is now. Huh? That's a small world. Well, he's in the department?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, hey, that's yet another point of connection. So did he do his dissertation work on this, or was he?
Yeah, as part of it, he focused on the environment and how different cities try to work with the environment, the natural environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the research and how the species are coming together, right? Because you have an idea, you see a gap, you know what the previous scholars have said. You're not going to say that because they have said it. You have something else to say. You have access to get into the field. You have ethics. You have all these things that we deal with as sociologists. But when did the project really, because sometimes you think you're going to do something, but you don't know for sure. When did you realize, I think we're onto something here and we can do this?
Yeah, I think that moment when I heard somebody say we built a people city, then I started looking at the data and seeing these massive differences. At first I was just comparing where I had been living, Houston, Texas, and where I was living, Copenhagen. But then, through the help of Kevin Smiley here, we found this incredible database of 100 European cities, so we could actually, with all of this data, be able to do systematic comparisons and see that there really was this range of cities and they had different outcomes. So one, it was, hey, there's two kinds of cities, market cities and people cities. And I don't think I've defined market cities for people. So market cities are mostly what we have in the US. We have a few people cities, but mostly we have market cities, and market cities say, our primary purpose is to create jobs and to attract companies and businesses, and so the government works very hard at doing that. And if we do that well, the rest of life kind of takes care of itself. And in fact, what we want is a lot of nonprofits, like we're a nonprofit, and the nonprofits will kind of, meet the needs that people might have, or neighborhood associations. So really what a city does is focuses on the economy, hence why we call it a market city. So that's the contrast. So then it was the hypothesis, the prediction was, because these are such different orientations of what we think a city is, we think it'll actually have, as sociologists, very different outcomes for people's lives. How much crime will there be? How much poverty? How much segregation? And so we started looking at that data and finding consistent patterns. You had mentioned that earlier. Sociologists love to find patterns. That, market cities do great on things like the economy, because that's what they care about. They're very good at inviting diversity of people. They're very bad at being able to extend a sense of equality among the people. It's just kind of, survival of the fittest. If you can make it, great, welcome. We want you to bring your innovation, your ideas. And if you don't make it, your fault, or, it's, sink or swim, but you're welcome to come here. Market cities have more segregation, because people cities they fret about that stuff. To them, that's a sign of failure if they have segregation or inequality between people. And when we're studying these people cities that we identify, they spend all their time worrying about that. Even though they have the lowest inequality and segregation in the world that we can find, they still, because they don't have zero, that's what they worry about.
The world within that. Folks, you're listening to Provost Dr. Michael Emerson, author of the book Market Cities, People Cities, The Shape of Our Urban Future, with Kevin Smiley, that I just heard, is at the university where I was a faculty member before, Small World at University of Buffalo. We want to remind you, our show is winding down. We want to remind you can call us at 312-738-1060, but probably you're enjoying the conversation so much that you decide that you want. Sarah looks a little lonely back there. Yeah. Give her a call, right? And talk to her. It's okay. We do not mind. So I know in part of the book you indicated that markets, while they are market cities and people city, there's a little bit of market in every people city, a little bit of people in every market city.
Yeah, definitely.
So if that is the case, then I know we're not. How do we know how the predominance? How do you determine when one is more than the other?
Yeah, so we had to come up with what we call a rubric, a way to measure that, so that we could be systematic and not just kind of guess or say, I think that one feels like a market city and that one. So we look at, what does the city say it cares about? So cities usually will tell you, here are our priorities, so you can find that. That's one of our measures, but we have many measures. Then we look at how, not only what do they say they care about, but how do they actually spend their money? So every city has a budget. Where does their money go? Houston, for example, takes about 40% of its budget to recruit companies. All right, and they actually allocate 2% of their money to things we would call people-oriented, neighborhood uplift, services for people, and so on. So compare that to Copenhagen, where about 90% of all its money is spent on services to people directly, neighborhoods and people, and then 10% for other things, the running of the city, fixing roads, whatever. So that was another measure. And then, of course, we could actually gather the data and look at, we had data on people's attitudes, so we did surveys. We did our own surveys in Houston and Copenhagen. Then we found this incredible source where it was surveying hundreds of people across these 100 cities. And we could look at, how do they think about crime? How do they think about safety? How much do they like their city? Do they think they have good public transportation? And we can start finding these substantial differences.
So let's take this in context, as we have there about less than 15 minutes here left. But let's take into context of Chicago. On the Shy Peace Show, we ask, how do you contribute to a more peaceful Chicago? You have indicated to us what sociologists could do, how North Park, can help. But as we talk about this idea of market and people cities, first of all, tell us, and on the way here, you'll be happy to know that I asked Sarah, based on the description that you've given, is Chicago more of a market city or people city? And she got the answer right.
Yes.
She's going places, I told you. Look out for Sarah again. So tell us, tell the viewers what type of city Chicago is, why it is that type of city, and what does it mean for quality of life here?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Let me also say that we made a what we call a continuum, and we have, right now I'll just mention 4 categories. So you have strong market city, that's Houston, Texas. Like it's totally sold out. Market, and anything else, other people can take care of it. And then we have what we call lean market. So the market dominates, it's what we care about the most, but we do some things that are focused on people, and we actually put Chicago in that category. Chicago has a pretty substantial public transportation system. They invest a lot of money in that. But one key marker for me is that Chicago, as strong of a market city as it is, it's a lean market city because it takes its most valuable land and makes it parks for people as opposed to developing, right? So that would be, I think in Houston they would never do that. That would be a waste of money to them. And then on the other side we have lean people cities. We have no strong people cities. So Copenhagen is a strong people city. It's like totally sold out to that. Our lean people city, the best representation we have in the U.S. is Portland. And if you read Portland, almost all their policies now are about people, but they still, because I think in the U.S., they still do some things that are more central to the market. So, okay, so one of the things that we found is that, and let's focus on crime, that market cities, for whatever reason, and we say partly because they always have higher inequality than people cities, they have higher crime, they have higher violent crime, more property thefts, and so on. So if you're going to be a market city, we're saying you need to count the cost, that you can know for sure that when you're a market city, you are going to encounter high crime. Let me give you an example now. So we have lean market city, Chicago, and lean people city, Portland. Your chances of being murdered in Chicago currently are 24 out of 100,000. Your chances of being murdered in Portland are 2 out of 100,000. So you are 12 times more likely. And that's what we see over and over again, a massive difference between people cities and market cities in crime. So if you stay a market city, in a sense, you're always going to have higher crime, and you're fighting to see how low you can make your high crime relative to other market cities. I think that we've seen no examples of a market city being able to get to those low levels that people cities have. And I think that's important. Like we conclude the book by saying, we don't take a perspective on you should be this kind of city or this. Just whichever kind of city you are, you need to know the costs and try to mitigate those costs.
So if a city wants to move from whether they are lean market or they're strong market, want to move from market, move more towards the trajectory of being a people's city, what are some of the first things they need to do?
Yeah, so we actually give you 8 steps to do that, and I won't go through all the steps,
Right.
but the first thing and most important thing is collectively, right? We form associations for social change. Chicago's very good at that. I always say you could throw a penny in the wrong way and there'll be a march downtown. But that's good. That means we have the ability to organize and try to go for change. And it would be to change the fundamental assumption about the city. So that you'll watch, if you're listening here, watch when there are discussions about what we should do, how in Chicago we should spend money. It will be, does this help the economy? Does this produce jobs or does it not? That's ultimately mostly what happens in the decision making. We would actually need to say, no, the argument is, I want to know, does this help people? How many people does this help? Which people are left out? That's how we should make our decisions. So it's constantly saying, just changing the question, the fundamental assumption that guides all our decision making.
So as we watch here, the city of Chicago's website, the program, the initiatives. You see Mayor Emanuel with a baby, and pre-K, strong pension. All right. So if you are doing research, you're looking at some signs, right?
Yeah.
Just looking at some things that stand out. Look at the mission statement of the website.
That's right.
And those types of things to see how people are framing themselves.
Yeah, and Chicago, interestingly, lots of cities right on the front page say, here are our priorities. Chicago, you got to dig deep, deep, and take a long time, and then go through all of the. They do put all of how they spend their money, but it's hundreds of pages. You have to wade through and look. So they're also a little obscure in how you really have to work at it to see what they say they care about.
Well, time flies when you're having fun. Believe it or not, I know Sarah hasn't given us the 1 minute sign to kick us out of the studio yet, but we are about to wind down. Folks, you have a last few seconds. I know you didn't want to interrupt the conversation between Dr. Emerson and myself. We thank you for the time, but hopefully we'll hear. Next week, we will have a very pleasant surprise. You'll be happy to tune in next week right here at Kent TV. Do you have any final few second words for our viewers?
Yeah, we create cities. They didn't just appear. We make decisions. We can make them better.
You heard it from the man himself. Folks, thank you so much for watching the Side Piece Show. I'm your host, Dr. Peter K.B. St. Jean. I'm the chair of the Sociology Department at North Park University, director of criminal justice, both within the Department of Sociology and the School of Professional Studies. I want to thank Dr. Michael Emerson, Provost Dr. Emerson, for being here. I want to thank earlier for Sarah McKay. Sarah, enjoy your break over the Christmas. we will say, well, we're not saying Merry Christmas yet because we'll be here for one more show before Christmas and one more show after Christmas. But until then, we wish you all the best and remember to contribute to a more peaceful Chicago. Until next time, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.